Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is Guy for round 1 of the 2021 FIA Nations Cup Stage 2 taking place at Autopolis with the Toyota GR86. So let's get this started by mentioning that for time trial and qualifying, have the brake balance at 0 or -1. Bring yourself towards the left side of the track, and your first braking point is in between this orange marker and the 100 meter board. So this is going to be exactly where I start to brake, right around here. Brake hard for a short while, and you want to gradually ease off of the brakes and then turn in after the 50 meter board and gradually get on the throttle. You want to be smooth through this first turn, because if you're too aggressive, you risk breaking out into a slide, which will make you lose quite a bit of time. And in my opinion, that first turn is the most critical turn in Autopolis. Next braking point, before the wall on the left ends, just before you cross the path, brake hard for a short moment, slowly ease off of the brakes as you turn in, and do lots of throttle control through these next couple of turns. Be a little careful through this turn because it is easy for the car to want to break out into a slide. Then brake before the curb on the right ends and bring yourself all the way into the inside of the turn and gradually get on the throttle so the car doesn't start to step out too much. Then bring yourself towards the right, and when the curb on the right ends, you want to ease off of the throttle, bring yourself towards the apex of the turn, go up to 4th gear, and once you're pointing away from the Marshall stand, that is when you start to fully accelerate. And if you do it right, you should be able to take the whole width of the track without getting onto the grass. Stay on the right, brake just after you pass this sign that is on the right before the 50 meter board. Brake hard for a short while, and this is exactly where I start to brake, by the way. And you want to bring yourself all the way into the inside of the turn. Get on the throttle as soon as you can, but be aware that since this turn does start to point downhill, the car may get a little unstable, so you may need to get ready to countersteer a bit. Then when you reach in between the 100 and the 50 meter board, that is when you want to start to brake, and you want to be a little careful with your braking because it is really easy to break out into a slide and lose a lot of time. Then it's all about throttle control through these next couple of turns. This left turn can be taken flat out, but you can do a little lift if you need to fine tune the car's direction. And just after that left turn ends, that is where you want to start to brake. Lots of braking and throttle control are needed to try to maintain a high speed while making sure that you're able to hit the apexes. As you start to make the left turn, ease off of the throttle, bring yourself towards the left, and before the curb on the left ends, you just want to do a little bit of braking to bring yourself towards the inside of the turn. So you'll see me use a little bit of braking, gradually ease on the throttle, and once you're pointing away from these tents, that is when you can start to fully accelerate and finish your lap. But that is pretty much it for the lap guide. Let's go ahead and take a look at the strategies. So just a quick note, my internet started acting up a lot lately, so the way I'm going to go about the rest of the guide, so the qualifying and the race strategies, are going to be a bit different than usual. But anyways, this was while I was able to stay connected for like 20 minutes, but we are doing the qualifying session now, 5-minute qualifying session, and because it takes around 2 minutes to clear a lap, you'll be able to get about 2 qualifying laps in. And for the qualifying session, have the brake balance at 0 or -1 so you can maintain good braking efficiency. As you're about to start your first qualifying lap, you want to go a bit wide into this second to last turn. That way you can go for a late apex and get a faster start to your new lap. Because there are pretty long straights and this car is slow, it is an N200 car, Supreme can be pretty useful, but it is a very double-edged sword, so you need to position yourself just right within the 3/4 of a second gap between yourself and the car in front of you. and you just want to be careful because if you get too close to the car in front of you, especially as you go through the twistier parts of the track like in sector 3, then you risk having to slow yourself down so you don't punt the car ahead of you, and you risk ending up losing time. So that is something that you do want to be careful about if you do decide to take part in the Supreme qualifying. But if you're in a lower level lobby, then you're better off qualifying by yourself. Give yourself plenty of space between yourself and the cars around you. But if there's one turn that you want to focus down on, it's the very first turn. This turn, it is really easy to get it wrong. You can brake just a hair too late and you're going wide. You can brake a hair too early and you're either going too slow or you're going too deep into the turn, so where the curves are. So you want to make sure that you're able to really nail down that first turn, be smooth through that first turn, because if you mess it up, then you're already losing quite a bit of time. And by quite a bit of time, we're talking anywhere from 1 to 0.3 of a second. But anyways, at the end of the day, just make sure you're able to nail down these turns, especially the first turn, and you have 2 chances to try to get a good qualifying time. But anyways, moving over to the race strategies, we are doing 10 laps at Autopolis with the brand new Toyota GR86. So this is the 2021 model that we just got from the DLC last night. Well, depending where you are in the world. But anyways, so 10 laps here at Autopolis. This is a great start, so make sure you have the traction control at 1, and shortly after the race starts, you can then bring it back down to 0 or whatever value you normally have it set to. Fuel is a ×2, so fuel is not a problem at all. You actually want to burn it off as you go through the grid walk, so you can try to line up the car a little bit. The tire wear is a ×8, so tire wear is actually an issue. We are on the sports hard tires, but what makes the tire wear a bit of an issue is that the front tires take a beating. So at the end of lap 5, you can see on the lower left hand corner of the screen that the front tires are taking quite a bit of tire wear, and that the rear tires, they don't have that much tire wear to begin with. So unlike the time trial and qualifying where you want to brake balance as 0 or -1 or 1 to the front, for the race you want to bring the brake balance towards the rear of the car, and we're talking anywhere from +3 to +5, because in this simulation I had the brake balance at +1 or 1 to the rear, and that wasn't enough to save the front tires. And because Autopolis has some pretty hard braking zones, it has a lot of technical sections, and because the GR86 is front heavy, the front tires will be taking more of the tire wear than the rear tires. And you can actually see it right now, and we're into lap 10. The front tires, they have a lot of tire wear, and the rear tires, they're still pretty good. So bring the brake balance towards the back of the car for the race. So I would say anywhere from +3 to +5 to try to save those front tires, because once the tire wear starts to kick in on those front tires, you're going to have to slow down a lot more to make the turns, otherwise you risk understeering. And yeah, that's actually pretty much it for the strategies. This is once again a 0-stop race. Keep an eye on the front tires. In the time trial and qualifying, you can have the brake balance at 0 or -1, and in the race, whip that brake balance to the rear of the car, so anywhere from +3 to +5. And I do want to give a quick word about the car itself, since this car is brand new. We just got it the other day. The GR86, if you've driven the older 86s that have been in the game for a while, the new 86 drives similar to those, but it drives a bit better than the older 86s. It does deliver a bit more power, it does feel a bit more responsive, but because of the power, the rear end is a bit more likely to whip out, so you do want to be a little careful about how you exit some of the slower speed turns so that you don't end up having the risk of getting some oversteer. And with the fuel and tire wear added into this car, it feels a bit better to drive compared to how it drives in time trial mode. And if you're going to do this race, definitely give yourself a bit of time to get used to how this car handles, because it drives a bit differently compared to the older 86s. And from this custom race, I did make a couple errors, so I ended up getting a 2213. And if I were to adjust the brake balance to the right values of +3 to +5 and not make those mistakes, then I should be getting a 2208, 2207, around that ballpark. But anyways, places to overtake and the penalty steering zone. Let's get this final section started. So the main straight, obviously one of the best places to try to get the overtake done. Make sure you get the inside line and be smooth through this turn, as I mentioned earlier, because if you're able to get a smooth turn, you should be able to get a pretty fast exit. But be aware that there is another overtake opportunity through this smaller back straight, so you do want to be a little careful, especially if you get a bad exit. After that, it's going to be single file line, but do be aware that entering this hairpin, some people might get aggressive and try to squeeze their way to pass you through this turn. After that, single file line once again, and this is where you also want to be a little careful, because as you're going up through the hill, an overtake opportunity can be opened up, especially if you get a bad exit, because this part right here is another place where it is possible to go for an overtake. So you want to make sure that you're able to get a fast exit, so those behind you don't try to dive you. Here is also the only penalty serving zone that is in this track, so if you have a penalty to serve, you'll be losing quite a bit of time through this downhill straight. After that, it is pretty much single file line, lots of technical sections through here, and that's going to make it really difficult to get any sort of overtaking done. And well, that's kind of it for this guide, so I'm gonna keep this guide nice and short, hopefully short enough. And yeah, so that's all from me. This is Mr. CA telling you to go practice right now, like now, and I'll see you in the next video.